We'll begin this segment talking about the breaking news that we got to start hour number 2. That is the Arizona Cardinals releasing the 3-time All-Pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, the 30-year-old wide receiver, now out on the open market and can go to whichever team will have him. And recently, Michael, he was on the I Am Athlete podcast with Brandon Marshall and the guys that they have on there, and he listed 5 quarterbacks he'd most like to catch passes from. Those 5 QBs: Bills QB Josh Allen, the Eagles Jalen Hurts, the Chiefs Patrick Mahomes, the Ravens Lamar Jackson, and the Chargers Justin Herbert. Do any of those fits make sense to you?
Well, certainly the Chiefs make sense. They lose Juju Schuster. They tried to sign him back, and, they offered him a deal that, wasn't really conducive. I think New England was paying more, but the Chiefs only have, less than $1 million in cap room. So that becomes a problem. Same thing with the Bills. The Bills draft Luke Kennard to be that slot receiver. They have $1.4 million worth of cap room. Now, they've signed most of their rookies, these teams, but you still need more than that as you go through the season and you're dealing with injuries. So, I think those two, the Ravens, would certainly make sense. Here's the issue, though, Femi. He was due to make $19.4 million. Yeah. I don't know if the Cardinals used the June 1 designation. I think they did, because they were sitting on $21 million of cap debt when they released him. So they pushed it off into June 1, which means it goes into next year. So, some goes into next year and then they prorate it out the following. So it's going to take who's going to put up the money to do that. I think when you look at it, the Bears have the most cap room in the league. The Panthers, which could use a receiver. They signed Adam Thielen, DJ Chark. They're looking for a veteran guy. That makes sense. The Bengals have Tyler Boyd, but would he make sense for them? I doubt if they would do that. You have to look really at cap room before you look at what he wants to do in terms of his fit.
Well, he also said this in terms of his fit on the podcast. He wants to play, he listed 3 things: with a quarterback that loves the game and brings everyone on board with him, a great defense, quote, defense wins championships, got to have a great D-line is what he said, and then also stable management, because he says he's been through 4 general managers in his career. And when I hear all those 3 things, Michael, I think of the city of brotherly love and the Philadelphia Eagles. Defensive line check, quarterback check, management check with Howie Roseman. I don't know if the Eagles could make it work. They have a lot of really good wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, but they meet the requirements at least.
Well, they do, and and it would give them an opportunity to have an inside slot receiver. And would they be able to? Every dollar they spend on this year, they take away from next year. I mean, at $19 million, would they have the money to do that? I think that becomes the question. How much is he willing to take on a discounted deal to come through there? I'm trying to see what the Eagles have the money to do it. They certainly could, and it depends on how they want to handle A.J. Brown, keep him on the outside, Devontae Smith on the inside. They get a lot of miles out of that. But, and then they have really a good tight end. And so, to me, it would be interesting how it all came together. It's a lot of money to put in the receiving core if they went down there, because I don't think he's going to take it. If he takes a discounted deal, it's $12 million. He was due to make $19.4 million.
Mm-hmm. And this actually just from...
I would look at the Ravens. I would think the Ravens, Lamar's connection to him, I know they drafted Zay Flowers in the first round, but,
the great
they talked about making a trade for him, and now he's available.
This is interesting. So NFL Network's Tom Pelissero just reported that it's not a post-June 1 cut. So the Cardinals will clear just under 7.4 in this year's cap space, eating all of the $22.6 million in dead money now, and then DeAndre Hopkins will be off the books in 2024. So they're just going to go ahead and bite the bullet and say, hey, man, we have the cap space to go ahead and do this. We're in a rebuilding mode. Let's just wash our hands from it right now and not even deal with this next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the right thing to do, because if, there's no sense, you're not winning anything. I mean, you're clearly centered on the Caleb Williams sweepstakes.
Hey, now.
I mean, you really are.
Hey, now. trying to replace my guy.
Well, I mean, look, I certainly would be looking at that. I mean, it wasn't, it's your own fault for extending them.
Yeah. Well,
just think about where they would be if they didn't extend it. Just let's play that game for a second, Femi. Mm-hmm. Say they were patient like they should have been, like I was preaching they should have done. They had no business extending the contract. There would be a debate whether to pick up the 5th year based on the injury. Okay? And say they did. Say they probably would have. But now they would have been able to draft. Now they could have compared it. But by giving him all this money, they closed the door. And you can't say, as much as you want to put on your white wig and be the barrister for all the quarterbacks, you can't say he's going to lead them to any title at all based on his body language and demeanor. I mean, we just saw Hopkins talk about, in that verbiage that Hopkins listed, there was not, he wouldn't have said that if he thought Murray was a quarterback that could lead the team and was all in, would he?
I don't think he would have, but I also think there's some circumstances outside of Kyler's control there, of Hopkins being older and the team not being where they like. Hopkins' timeline doesn't match the team's timeline.
Man, you could find excuses. I swear to God, you could find excuses. I've never seen anything like it in my life. You're so good at the guy just basically came out with requirements, and one of them is the opposite of what Murray is, and yet you're defending him.
No, I'm not.
How is that possible?
I'm just saying that
he just gave out. I mean, nobody asked him for the requirements. He let it out there. Now, if you're two, I'm not talking about you, but if you can't put 1 and 1 together, that he was taking a shot at Murray based on the description of the quarterback, you're just naive. You're just being flat out. You're just not looking at it.
He made the requirements, and I think that even if Kyler Murray met those requirements.
Who was he talking about? The Houston quarterback?
No.
The one he played with when he was with Bill O'Brien? Was he talking about Deshaun? I mean, who do you think he was talking about?
Well, he's just talking about his next quarterback. That's what he wants out of his next QB.
No, he was talking about all the things that he wants, which means he didn't have. When you want something, that means you didn't have it.
No, 100%. Well, here's what I'll say. Kyler's hurt. Like, whether he was the greatest teammate or the worst teammate, he's hurt. He's not going to be able to play. DeAndre Hopkins turns 31 in 10 days. Based on his timeline and based on the Cardinals' timeline being what it is, win total at 4.5, it was not going to work out with DeAndre Hopkins and the Arizona Cardinals. So the two go ahead and go their separate ways. Was the situation great in Arizona with the quarterback? Probably not. They had their own kind of sideline discussions and all that stuff during the season. We saw that from the in-season Hard Knocks. But I don't think that this is a direct shot at saying, hey, this guy was awful. Let me go ahead and find the oasis because I've been hanging out in the desert here for the last 3 years.
I think it is. And I think, let me go one step further. I think the Cardinals and Gannon and Monty Ossendorf are in the same position I'm in. I think they're in the same spot. I think they could talk all the love they want for Murray publicly, but I think they're in the same spot because they're getting rid of all the guys. They're trying to clear the deck. They're trying to rebuild the culture. And it's hard when you got the guy who's the anti-culture player. I mean, let's face it. Like, they're not getting rid of Budda Baker. They want to make Budda Baker. You think Budda Baker wants to leave? He wants to leave because he's not getting paid. He don't like the situation.
Yeah. Well, Hopkins is kind of the same
I'm
boat.
not the only one who sees that Murray doesn't have any leadership skills for the position. It requires that. That's part of why you make all that money, is because you're the guy who leads the team. No. And this guy's walking out the building, and now he's telling everybody what he wants.
I do agree with that. Like, Kyler's leadership skills, that's not line one when you talk about Kyler Murray. So I agree with that right there.
It has to be line one when you talk about a quarterback you're paying over $45 million a year.
No, that's definitely a fair criticism.
What team has a great quarterback that's not a great leader? I mean, Jeff George, as talented as Jeff George was, he had no leadership skills. You couldn't win anything with him. He'd make a great highlight tape.
The mayor has a pretty good highlight tape out there when he's healthy and on the field.
Running around. Running around.
I mean, there's that game in Las Vegas, week 2. He was running around, made that comeback. Go ahead and lead them to victory in that one. But Hopkins, he put out what he wants from a next quarterback, a next organization, and he wants to play on a team that has a really good defense. We'll find out if he signs
and
this
a quarterback.
Week, next week.
And a quarter. You left that out. See, this is how we do it. We just leave out the most important part.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.